Okay, last video. Yeah, it's not that I dislike this visual novel. It brands itself as a horror, but doesn't come across as a horror. Like, there's no horror elements, and I'm not talking about jump scares because I fucking hate jump scares. I don't think they have anything to do with horror. They are literally a jump scare, and they are really cheap, and I don't agree with them being necessary to make a good horror game. I think that without them, and I think if you don't use jump scares and you instead create a creepy atmosphere, creepy visuals, creepy noises, creepy visuals. One game, NG something, fuck, NG something. It's like another visual novel type. There's like, I would say there's no jump scares in that game, but I was intensely creeped out a lot. So creeped out. The design on some of the things in that game are so good. They are so good. Like, it is my favorite horror game, and I've probably mentioned it before, or maybe that was on a different, like, my older channel, or I should say my main channel that I secretly uploaded things to but never made them public, where I actually also played NG. But man, that game, the designs just blew me away, and the fact that there were no jump scares and that you just got creeped out because of like things you would see in the corner or something like that, you'd just be like, oh my god. Like, one of the most effective, I know I'm going off on like a fucking tangent right now, but I can't help it, I'm so tired already. One of the most effective things I feel like is when there's a transition to another scene, and then just like in the corner there's just something there that's not supposed to be there, and you just kind of you are in the silence with the game because you don't know what to say, and you don't want to speak because you don't want to even draw attention to yourself, because you're worried that this thing will hear you even though it's in a game. I think that is very, very powerful, way more powerful than playing on your anxiety, and then just making you jump. That is momentary as well. You will not like, that will not stay with you. It'll be like, bah, and you'll be like, oh my god. You're like, whew, that gave me a fright. That gave me a real fright, but that won't stay with you. Meanwhile, there's many parts in the NG game. Why can't I remember it? I know it's NG something. I'm gonna look. NG. Is it? I'm pretty sure it's NG because I always associate it with new game. Oh, Spirit Hunter NG. That's it. And it has like 49 positive reviews, but it's fantastic. Like, why isn't it more known? It is absolutely fantastic. Just everything about it is really good. Makes me want to play it again, but I want to wait for a little while longer. So Spirit Hunter NG, absolutely 100% completely recommend. It's really good, and there are just so many times in it where you're just sat in silence because you don't want to be heard. That's all I'm saying. This game that we're playing right now, it's not scary. I think they've tried really hard, and it is free. It's not like I paid for this. I'm just getting all my grievances out with it right now, because maybe this last route will answer some questions. But the things that are scary in this game that aren't even really scary are the Nixie, you know? And I know that's what's supposed to be scary, and like the fog and oppressive atmosphere is supposed to be scary, but you don't really get that feeling from it. And the Nixie, they're not really scary. They're just like malformed black blobs with like crying faces. Maybe the Nixie are somehow cursed humans who died there, and so they're just always crying because they're sad and they can't like fight their curse. I don't know, I feel like I'm struggling to like, I'm not even struggling, I'm just like making up my own story for it. And I know some people like to make their own story for things, like they like to theorize and go, oh, maybe it's this. But we haven't really had that much like hints towards anything. Like, why is there suddenly magic? Why do these bridges just come up? I feel like the guide's route will explain some things. If it doesn't, I'm gonna be disappointed. For sure. But and the fact they keep with Lou, they're just like, oh, he's dead. Yeah, he died. Not gonna tell us how. Like, she doesn't even question it. And yeah, you can be like, oh, she's just like grief-stricken that she can't save anyone, that she didn't save anybody. But like, I don't know, it's just so awkward. It's just such an awkward interaction and one that doesn't feel real. And I know this is a game, but you still want a hint of realism in your game, as in the interactions that you have with people. Like, it's not even surreal, it just doesn't make sense. Like, there's being surreal, like there's a surreal conversation going on where you're like, wow, this doesn't feel right. But it's like purposeful. This just feels unfinished, like, oh yeah, he's dead. We never know why, we never know how. It's like at the end of Lou's route when the guy just comes along and is like, yeah, he was executed. Yeah. He was executed. I'm not gonna say why though. Not gonna say what he did to the town to make him become like to be executed and die in a bad way. But yeah, he was executed. It's like, did the person who made this not think to answer the question? There is leaving some things to the imagination of the audience, but then there is leaving loose threads, and that is Lou is a constant loose thread, in my opinion. And that's bothering. How long have I been ranting for? 7 minutes. I'm an idiot. Okay, let's just go. I need to go back to the guide though first. Okay. Yeah, so basically my problems with it are that it's not scary at all. A free horror visual novel. It's not scary. I'm so sorry. It's not scary. I know that you are appealing to a certain audience, possibly, but it's not scary. Even like the CG of the prowlers. Can we go to this one? They just don't look scary. They look like, I feel so mean saying this, but it's just a critique, right? I'm just critiquing. I think that Margaret is lovely, right? Yeah, I think she's really lovely. I'm sorry, I still have the Steam page open and I saw a CG I don't have of Margaret just asleep and I was like, oh, I don't have that. It's really pretty. Yeah, this is just a critique. There are good things about this game as well, which I should probably say so it doesn't actually seem like I'm just like shitting on it. But the monsters, they're not imaginative. Oh look, they have like a little like smile on their faces, but they're like crying. But they're just black. They're just black human shapes. I don't know, it's just I like the idea of the eyes being all glowy so you can like see them from beneath the surface, and that's creepy, right? That's creepy. Like I mean, I'm afraid of deep water. I'm afraid of water you can't see the bottom of. So like, if there's a lake or anything that anything you can't see the bottom of, I don't want to be in there. I will have a panic attack if I go in there. It's the fear of the unknown. But even the fact that you have to be walking on this bridge, and once you step onto that bridge and go a certain amount, you are stuck on that bridge around this deep water with things that you can just see under the surface watching you. That in itself is creepy. That is so creepy, right? But then they get out of the water and try to make them more scary, but it doesn't. And it's also like, oh, only certain ones can do that. But honestly, it only seems like there's maybe 20 Nixie. Even less, maybe. And they just seem to like follow them. And then when they get in trouble, they like swim away and then you're free of them for a little while. I don't know what to think. Sometimes they're like, oh my god, there's so many of them. Or they try to make you feel like they're everywhere in the lake. But then it's like, oh, I guess there's not that many of them. And like we have a brief reprieve from them because we scared them off. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Right, we're missing one here. I like the art. The art, like in the CGs, is quite good. They sometimes have problems with sprites. Some of the sprites are good as well. Oh, this Margaret dying does get to me. I don't like that. Because I like Margaret. He's not scary. Isn't that just a close-up? That's just a close-up of this one. Right? Yeah. And it's just a close-up of that one. It's kind of a little bit of a cop-out. But again, it's fine, it's fine. I think I'm missing, this is the one I'm missing of Margaret, but I don't know how to get it. I'm missing a lot of CGs, how? I'm confused. Okay. Let's bloody start, shall we? Let's actually just start. I need to get to the guide. I'm just going on a full-on fucking tangent. How long have I been ranting for? 11 minutes. Yeah, that sounds about right. Alright. Guides. Okay, 6th playthrough. Start a new game. Okay. Say nothing. I believe we should go. Not seriously. Pull him forward. Kick it off. Current format has worked so far. Turn. Emily's footsteps stay as loud as they were before. Wait, we have to kill Margaret on this one? That's a bit weird. He's made the turn as close behind me as ever. Out the corner of my eye, yeah. Emily starts beside me, but I grab his hand and pull. We start running again, leaving Margaret flailing in the water behind us. I don't like the guide's route already. If she has to die, Margaret's angry cries, blah blah blah. Emily curses between heavy breaths, calling those things every foul name in his large book. I try to focus on the blah blah blah. No, we can't just leave him here without a light. It's certain he'll die. I glance at my partner. Bemley is outraged. Bemley and I frantically share more looks between each other, trying to communicate without words. Neither of us have a desire to speak or be the first one to make a choice. You found yourself alone and unlit on Sinnlos. It is for me.
You must have...
The man's smile grows, blah blah blah. I have to do nothing. Bemley stares at the man as he leaves. We both watch him drag his little frame down the bridge, quickly fading from sight. We had to let him go. We've already suffered the loss of one of our own. The space the man vanished into is dark and silent. We can see and hear nothing of him, not even his footsteps. The guide was right. There are no other options. Well, this is what I have to believe. We need to get through this somehow, and being weighed down with guilt will only distract us. The guide starts moving again at a quick pace. Emily and I managed to keep our ground, as does the guide. He presses on without even bothering to see if we were able to follow. Emily growls in frustration as we push to keep up with the guide's pace. Despite still having the comfort of one another, we were incapable of doing any true good. We were only able to save ourselves. The quiet moment passes between us. And then the guide is there. He moves so smoothly that his steps on the soft sand are nearly silent, and his dusky clothes blend with the thinning of the night.
The sun will rise soon.
Bemley levels an empty look towards the guide. Again, I honestly just want to get through the text and get to something interesting. Besides me, Bemley is still fast asleep. The guide, however, blah blah blah. Bemley wakes suddenly, rising with alarm. My mouth opens, then shuts, and after a moment of fumbling, a word finally escapes. Bemley gives me a gentle smile and makes his way over to me.
Morning.
A pocket of quiet descends over us. Bemley sighs. The atmosphere is weighing on him already.
We should eat something.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I am skipping some stuff.
Before the sun. Why do you do?
Because we've heard a lot of this. Honestly, we've heard a lot of this. It's just a little bit different. So we need to read it again.
Bemele, I know you're angry, but
And we've done.
We can.
I'm going to speak with the guide. See ya. Oh, we actually see him. I see the guide with his back towards me. I didn't try to be quiet as I approached. He must have heard me.
You haven't asked me to leave. Does that mean I can speak to you?
You may say what you like.
When he turns to face me, one feeling comes to the forefront of my mind. Sadness. I feel the tears well in my eyes. After all that's happened, the people who have died, how am I even supposed to talk to someone like him? He does not even seem concerned. He does not seem to care about anything.
Why can't I be more like you?
My voice is soft, but by his raised eyebrows, it seems the guide heard me.
I do not want to feel pain or sadness anymore. I'm so tired. I wish I could feel nothing at all.
My head droops, and I cover my face and cry.
How are you able to go through this every day? Is it nothing more than becoming used to it? I have seen death so many times since becoming a guard, and even before that I was familiar with loss, yet it still hurts so much. The sting has not dulled at all. I have simply learned to hide it better. And now it seems I cannot even do that.
I cannot stop sobbing. The tears just continue to fall. His disinterest strangely makes it easier to let my true self show. Although he remains silent, I can still feel the guide near me. He has not abandoned me here. After some time, I manage to stifle the tears and look up at him. His eyes are distant, looking out across the expanse of Sinnlos.
You do not need practice. You need a new perspective. You can see 1,000 deaths and still feel pain at each one, so long as they hold meaning for you.
How can I do otherwise? Losing one's life is a tragedy.
There are people dying even as we speak. You do not care about them.
I do not have to see those with my own eyes.
But you can still decide that those deaths are not relevant to you. Or perhaps you choose to feel that whether a person dies sooner or later makes no difference. Or even that death is to be preferred over life in this world.
His logic is so dumb.
Their death may even be beneficial to others. Any such idea would be fine. Pick what is easiest for you to swallow.
But I guess he's not offering true wisdom, he's just offering like a band-aid or whatever, right? It sounds so cold, but he is simply giving what I asked for. I am not able to stop myself from inquiring further.
What is your perspective?
He pauses a moment in thought.
The villages in this area pay me so that I am able to stay and lead people when needed. But making a living is not the reason I do so. Neither is it so I can help those who wish to cross. I stay here so that I can make certain as few people attempt the journey as possible.
What?
I have decided to believe that I make a difference in the amount of those who come in contact with Sinnlos. So long as I am here, others rarely try to cross on their own. They either wait for the few trips I am able to make, or don't go at all. I can also turn someone away if I feel they are unfit. My one hope in this life is that someday people will never attempt to cross the bridges again.
For a moment, I can feel the genuine emotion in his words.
It is a futile dream, I know. It is impossible to convince everyone.
Then the feelings are gone.
For those who do insist upon going, well, if their life is worth risking to save a few days of travel time, then it isn't worth very much at all. Understand?
Yes.
Fine.
He closes his eyes and thoughtlessly brushes a few loose strands of his hair back behind his ear. He seems to be losing some of his patience. For some reason, it is hard for me to see the guide acting so normal. It makes me realize how I never truly saw him for what he was. Not your
What?
fault. The guide turns back to me incredulous.
I didn't want someone to die. I didn't.
My words get choked behind tears.
But you're just a man. You cannot do more than anyone else. You cannot fix what is wrong with these bridges, or stop dangers from appearing, or make it so people will not have reasons to cross. You simply do what you can, like anyone else.
I feel anger begin to mix with my sorrow.
It is the world that needs to change, not you. No matter what choice you make, there will be suffering and hardships. All this time, I said I did not wish to leave anyone alone. But I have done so from the beginning. You are not my enemy.
The guide stares at me blankly. It seems as though he may be intentionally stripping himself of the human qualities he showed moments before.
We are not allies either. We are merely two strangers, walking the same path.
Regardless, I will be there for you.
Again, he watches me without speaking.
You should protect yourself.
He moves from me to stare across the water. The conversation is over. No matter, I will be strong for the both of us.
I'm going to see how everything is on the island.
As I turn and leave, I feel comforted that, at least in a small way, I understand the guide better. I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but I managed to pick my way through the bush quite well. Can I skip now? Probably not, yeah. After moving on, I find Bemele in a jagged clearing, leaning against a tree. He's already noticed me and is looking my way, smiling. As I get closer, I can pick up on the sadness behind his jovial expression.
How are you faring? Any problems?
Everything is fine. I came to check on you.
How kind. I've calmed down since then.
I'm glad to hear that. Is there any way I can help or anything you'd like to say?
He raises an eyebrow at that, his grin becoming markedly playful.
I didn't expect to see you so worried about me, Kika.
I have to force myself not to avert my eyes at that comment, embarrassment flowing into me. Bemele notices my reaction. He does not draw attention to it, however. Instead, he throws his arms out wide with a sour expression.
Have you seen the guide?
Bemele is clearly asking out of a sense of obligation and makes no secret that he's not pleased to be discussing the guide. I nod in response.
I saw him earlier. He is the same as always.
Good. In that case, I'm going to stretch my legs for a bit. I feel stiff from standing in one place for so long.
I bid him a brief goodbye. Bemele waves as he departs. I find that I've been pacing back and forth for quite some time. I finished my check a while ago, so now I have nothing left to do but aimlessly wander. Can I skip? Behind me, leaves rustle. I turn to face the noise with noticeable unease. What I see is the guide. I blink in surprise. I didn't expect to run into him, and from the look on his face, he didn't expect me either.
Hello again. Is everything well?
Nothing has changed.
I consider his words.
That is the best we can all hope for under these circumstances.
Sorry, yawn. The guide nods.
Yes. It won't be much longer before it's time to depart. I will wait here for the time being.
Fine.
The guide is a strange figure. Oftentimes, it feels as though he has scarcely any presence at all, and at other times, he makes me feel apprehensive. In this instance, however, I don't mind his company whatsoever. We wait in somber silence until the sun begins to vanish from the sky.
It is time to go to the meeting point.
I nod. We walk together. The lack of conversation does not weigh on me whatsoever. There is nothing to say in this moment, and there's no nagging pressure to fill the silence. When we arrive, the spot is empty. The guide quietly gazes out into the forest. I find myself closely observing him. It surprises me how accustomed I've become to his ways. As I watch him, I feel a sense of resolve. The guide has made this trip more times than one could count. I need to remember that this is possible. We can survive. Before too long, Bemele appears. He gives me a half smile as he waves.
Hello there.
What up? I wave back at him. With the group now complete, the mood becomes tense. I can no longer ignore the fact that it's nearly time to leave again. However, I refuse to let go of this newfound determination. All three of us wait in silence until darkness overtakes the island. Night settles like a shroud over the lake, every inch of the world now covered in unrelenting darkness. Suddenly, there is a gurgling. The water parts as the bridges of Sinnlos rise, powered by some unnatural force, creaking like they might fall apart. I feel an inexplicable pounding like a hammer in the back of my head, beating faster and heavier than my own heart. Is this something we can skip?
We must go
Nope.
now.
Guess not. We must go now. Bemele and I match his pace. I can feel the air weighing on us, a sensation that slows our steps despite being rested. Something hovers in my mind, the mirrored memory of the beginning of last night's journey. One day ago feels like a lifetime passed. The thick, inky water sloshes reluctantly off the boards, bleeding back into the lake until finally it stills. We've read this before. Let me skip it. All tense as day-old corpses, we walk over the bridges in silence. The only sound that accompanies us is the thick lapping of the water at the bridge. Bemele stays close by my side with a sour expression on his face. He evidently has little interest in masking his disgust. He murmurs something beneath his breath, but it's inaudible. I decide not to ask about it. It wasn't meant for me to hear. It feels as though barely any time has passed when it is explained that half the night has crept by. We encountered a few sunken bridges which forced us to reroute, while other paths were rotten enough to make us stagger our steps. However, the biggest threat of all is eerily absent, the Prowlers. Yeah, I mean, we've read this, but it won't let me skip it.
What?
Oh no. Okay, I think it's fine. I thought that it was freezing on me again. I whisper the question softly, almost silently, as I scan left and right across the impossibly empty bridges for any sign of movement. I ponder whether they're still weary from the consuming blaze that lit up the night yesterday. Yeah.
This isn't right. It shouldn't be nearly this easy to cross. Not after what we went through the other night.
Could they be planning something?
Bemele lightly shakes his head. He speaks with suspicion in his voice as he peers at the guide ahead.
I don't know.
As time passes by, we continue to see nothing but more bridges and fog. Beside me, Bemele is becoming more and more agitated the longer we go without disruption. I can read Bemele well enough to know that his anger is still directed at the guide, rather than the bridges themselves. It was my hope that he would be able to contain his feelings towards our lead until we had put this maze behind us. That is becoming unlikely. I resolve to step in before he grows too heated and there is yet another hazardous argument.
Your concentration is clouded, Bemele. What is troubling you?
Surely you're already aware. It's him.
Bemele glowers hatefully at the guide. I purse my lips for a moment before continuing, resigned.
I do know that. However, you need to stop allowing that to consume you, or else you could get hurt. Or even...
Bemele releases an exasperated sigh while crossly folding his arms.
That is impossible. I can't stop myself from thinking about it. Everything makes so much sense now.
What do you mean by that?
Recall yesterday. I asked him why he would lead others at all if he was heartlessly going to leave them behind. What if this is the reason? Before, we could scarcely escape these monsters, and now I can't even hear a whisper of one. What if they're already satisfied with what they've taken?
My eyes widen and I stifle a gasp. The situation at hand, giving both of us a reason to think on that possibility, is absolutely unsettling, but his conclusion is even worse still. The notion of the guide allowing others to die unnecessarily on purpose to make it less dangerous for the remaining few, that is not something I was prepared for. It couldn't be.
Even back when we started, the first time we met the guide, he mentioned that at least one of us would die before the journey was finished. Didn't that exchange seem strange to you? He said it as though it was a price to pay for coming with him. The guide is free to do as he pleases. He can and will threaten to leave the entire group behind at so much as a hint of resistance. Nothing is stopping him. He knew this was going to happen. He had to know.
I take a few moments to breathe. Despite the danger, I only barely resist shutting my eyes against the world.
We need to make it to the other side. We must keep moving forward and survive. The guide is our only way across.
My usual reply to Bemele's worries does not make an impression. His eyes are not swayed. He continues to stare into me.
I'm saying he cannot be trusted with our lives at this very moment. I need an answer to that, Kika. What do you really think?
I do not agree. Bemele's face darkens for a moment. I continue.
The guide may not care what fate lies ahead for us, that is fair to say, but that is not the same as intentionally conspiring against us.
Bemele opens his mouth in an attempt to counter, however I raise my palm to stop him.
Perhaps you may be right, Bemele. I'm not blindly trusting the guide. However, I believe it's too early to come to such a dire conclusion.
I will not rashly accuse him unless there is sufficient evidence supporting it. When I said that I was going to look out for the guide as well as the others, I meant it. He seems to have more to say on the matter, but he finally sighs and drops the topic. Instead, he pensively looks forward and we continue on. Our progress continues steadily, and we still encounter no significant difficulties.
How much longer until we reach the other side? We have traveled quite a ways.
Bemele's quiet breaking question doesn't sound particularly enthused.
It should only be another couple of hours.
Huh.
Bemele is unconvinced. It is not only I who notices. The guide suddenly stops. Eerily, he turns his head to the side and looks back at us.
Is there a problem with that?
Is there?
Oh my god, you're so annoying. Progress through the bridges at a much quicker clip this time. Bemele's question was not idle curiosity, he was confirming that fact for himself. I should have known. The guide looks to be slightly irritated over the attitude Bemele has taken.
If you have something to say, you should say it. Unless you're afraid that I'm going to leave you behind.
His statement lands heavily on us. Did he listen to our conversation? There was no sounds to cover our voices, however I had assumed we were far enough away from the guide to keep our words to ourselves. He stares with such an icy expression I nearly freeze in place. Bemele, on the other hand, heats up and grows more hostile. He leaves my side to rush into the guide's flickering light.
Don't.
This is going much too far. I urge him to come back. He ignores me and takes a stand facing the guide.
Am I right? Are you going to leave us behind after what I've done?
Oh my god, Bemele's so annoying. He's like the only one who knows how to get across the bridge and you're just like picking fights with him all the time. I know your ideals are completely at opposite ends as this guy, but you need to calm your tits, man. The guide isn't bothered at all by Bemele entering his space. He gives a level answer.
No.
Well, that's grand. In that case, I'd like to know if I'm on the right track about something else. Are the monsters missing because they've already eaten? Or is there some other reason why they've all mysteriously vanished?
Yes, Bemele, let's take up precious time on this bridge and ask questions that could be asked at the end of the journey. The guide pauses for a moment, his eyes close and he becomes completely still.
It's possible.
Bemele glares at the guide over the admittance. It's as though he heard nothing after the first line the guide spoke. The guide is unfazed.
If you enter these bridges, all you should expect is death. That is no secret. You need to stop putting so much energy into finding meaning, or else you will end up like the others.
Bemele ends up speechless, caught off guard by the guide openly discussing his accusation. The guide continues at Bemele's silence, annoyance leaking into his voice.
You think that the results would have been different if only I had said more or did something differently. But that is not true. The conclusion would be exactly the same. If Lou hadn't died when he did, he would have been lost at some other point during the trip.
Lou?
Yes, Lou was his name. I had spoken with him in the past. He wanted to cross the bridges. I had deemed him unfit. He was far too desperate and unprepared. There's no helping someone like that.
The guide sounds even more agitated as he elaborates. Bemele seems to be finished with being surprised. His anger reignites.
That's all well and true. Why haven't you died yet? How is it that you've been able to cross these horrendous bridges over and over again without suffering the same consequences as everyone else?
The guide's face twists into a vicious snarl. He shouts.
I have died. I have no life to give. Everything I am, everything I could have been was surrendered to this lake. That is the only reason why I'm able to stand before you now. I can show you the way, and I can give you advice on how to survive the perils you will face.
Is he actually dead
That is
though?
all I'm able to offer. Is that not enough for you? What else do you want from me? Kindness? Sympathy? It's been far too many years since I was capable of giving anything like that.
He finally stops to catch his breath, though the emotion in his eyes still shines intently. There is no response from either of us. I feel gut-wrenching sadness for the guide. He deserves to have a good life, as good a life as any of us. An agonizing silence permeates the air. No one dares to even move. The tension is cut as the boards beneath me start to creak. My eyes dart down. The bridge is sinking. Rapidly, instinctively I jump backwards, but the new section of bridge groans horribly as it too starts to tilt into the water. They keep getting farther and farther away with each disappearing platform I move off of.
Kika!
I look up at Bemele's call. My chest tightens when I see him and the guide on what has become the other side of a small chasm. I leap back just in time as the bridge under me snaps like a twig. Glancing over again, they keep getting farther and farther away with each disappearing platform I move off of. Dread creeps up my neck and I nearly lose my footing once I realize what's happening. Desperately stumbling backwards, I finally manage to regain my balance. I use this to leap far enough back that the bridge I land on doesn't immediately start to fall apart under my weight. In another 3 swift steps, I am finally on sturdy wood. The bridges reluctantly stop shifting and settle. The only trace left of what was once a huge section of bridge is a few splintered boards floating in the murky water. The lake consumed it. Somehow, I am not surprised. Regaining my bearings, I face what has become of my circumstances. I am now separated from Bemele and the guide by a far wider gorge than anyone could leap. My throat goes bone dry as I teeter at the end of the bridge, mind wildly scrambling for a solution that doesn't come. I lock onto Bemele's face. He's completely aghast, darting from one side of the bridge to another, like a panicked animal. There is no mistaking that he's desperate to help me in some way. However, there's also no mistaking that there aren't any options available to him. He turns to the guide with pleading eyes, all his earlier hostility sunken with the bridges. I'm too far off to grasp what Bemele is asking, but I get the impression he is seeing if there's another way. The guide turns to me. He's completely cooled down from the early interaction, back to his same placid expression. The guide and I lock eyes. He doesn't release me from his gaze for a few heartbeats. He focuses back on Bemele, who has now gripped him by the cloak. The guide says one word. Judging from the look of pure terror on Bemele's face, I can only assume it was a no. There's no way back to them. The guide frees himself from Bemele's grasp and continues speaking. Bemele still seems horribly shaking at his words, but I can barely see from here, but I think he's quivering. As I watch the two discuss my fate, unable to say anything, fear starts to crawl over me. My arms run cool to cold to freezing. It's not long before the rest of my body follows. I notice Bemele cover his face with his still shuddering hand. The guide's voice echoes loudly across the waters, separating me from them.
Go back and take the next bridge you come across that goes west. There may be enough time for you to find your own way.
I blink, taken aback for a moment, before I quickly regain my composure. That's right. This isn't over. I still have my lantern with me. The prowlers are less active, and if the guide says that it's possible, it could be true. I nod solemnly at his words and yell back.
I'll meet you there. Don't wait for me.
He bows his head and starts to slowly back away from the edge. Bemele pulls his head from his hand to look at me. Even across the water, I can tell that he's crying. I smile forlornly at him as the wind whips against my back. I speak softly.
You need to go.
There is no way he could have heard me, yet I'm confident that the sentiment got across. I spin on my heels and run back the way we came, searching for the bridge the guide said to take. I can only hope that we all safely reunite before this night ends. I spare a brief glance behind me, however there's not a trace of them or even the dead end I was stranded at. With a painful contracting of my heart, I realize that I am truly alone now. Quickly, I shake off the thought and refocus my attention on what's in front of me. The first branching off the path comes into reach. I need to look at the... I need to... okay. So it turns out this wasn't the last video. The next one will be though, guaranteed. Okay, bye. I'll see you in the next one.